What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of 8 Cubes. We are back on Lambie's channel because he is back. Lambie series, welcome
Yo.
back. We talked before the show about what the topics were going to be. You were emphatic that the first one had to be Darkhawk is back. All caps, 2 exclamation points. Tell me why there's 2 exclamation points on this, Lambie. Why is this so important to you?
Okay, so this is very important to me for a very amount of reasons. The first one, firstly, I have a lot of very nice Darkhawk variants and I miss playing them. A lot of people miss playing their Darkhawks. People every time come to me on stream and say, can you play a Darkhawk deck? And I'm like, no, it's not very good, but now it is. Why? Because the most important thing that has changed is Blob is no longer the end-all be-all to Darkhawk. It used
Yeah.
to be pre-nerf Blob. When you play it, you would suck out all the cards in your own deck, and Darkhawk is definitely 0 power. But the thing is now, Blob eats like on average maybe 3 to 5 cards. And like when we talk about Blob, we talk about Blob Thanos as well. Eating 3 to 5 cards in a Blob Thanos deck means your Darkhawk now still probably is about between like 8 to 10 power, not including like rocks. And that's super relevant, right? Because in the past when you play Blob, it just completely invalidates the Darkhawk that was played on the board. Now, when your opponent plays Blob, they need to think, oh, how small is the Darkhawk gonna be? And if it's not that small, it still wins a lane. It's like what, 10 power on average? Like in my testing, Darkhawk can be like 10 power still, even after like they play Blob. So this is very relevant. And I think because of this change, we don't have to play Leech in the Darkhawk deck anymore, right? Because it used to be that we had to Leech on 5 so that they couldn't blob on 6. But the thing is now, you don't have to worry about that, right? You just let them blob and your Darkhawk is still relevant. And you don't have to play a 5-3 on turn 5, which is very bad in a tempo-based deck. So I've seen so many different Darkhawk builds popping up here and there. I'm not sure which is the best one yet, but I'm very happy to say that because of the blob nerf, Darkhawk is rampant right now, and I think it's a good thing. And I can't wait to like explore what is the best Darkhawk build.
So, given that we probably don't know what the best Darkhawk build is, do you have an idea of the shape of it? Do you have a preference for the Zabu type builds, the Beast Falcon type builds? What are you leaning towards as a Darkhawk connoisseur, if that's how you describe yourself?
Yeah, actually, what you mentioned is really just basically it. Like there's these 2 angles that I'm looking at right now: the
Yeah.
bounce and the Zabu good cards version. The Zabu good cards version is a bit more linear and I would say a bit more high rolly because you have like Iron Lad into Darkhawk, Iron Lad into Doom, and then there's like just generic Darkhawk plus Zabu energy cheating things. Then the bounce one is. Oh, honestly, the bounce one really just cause like Beast, Nico, and Forge is insane together, and then you can play Korg. So, like I've tested both. I actually prefer the simpler one right now, just like straight up Darkhawk, Zabu, some tech here and there. That's what I'm leaning towards right now. But I cannot honestly tell you which I think is strictly better. But time will tell. But I really am happy that Darkhawk is back.
So my experience with the Darkhawk deck is that I tend to prefer doing what the Darkhawk deck does, which is power
Rocks.
and tech in the context of like Annihilus bounce or things like that. Like I tend like I they're not the exact same deck, but they fill a sort of similar role as a mid-rangey deck that gets a certain amount of power, but not like a ton of power, and then uses tech cards to compensate for the fact that it's not going wildly over the top. And I do think there's room for that, but I think it's really going to be kind of a stretch to figure out what the best what the best deck to occupy that space is going to be. And I think it's a sign of just how early in the metagame it is that we disagree on what that deck is right now. Because I do think Darkhawk is good. I just think that most of the time, if I'm doing that, I'd rather be doing that in a different shell. If I'm doing, points and tech reactive slash proactive gaming, I tend to default towards the Annihilus bounce thing. What I find interesting is I used to run them both in the same shell, but now I don't think I have the room. I think I have to choose between the Darkhawk and the tech in the Annihilus shell, which sucks. It really sucks. I really don't like doing that because I have to choose the tech, and I really like Korg. But that's life. Next up, let's talk about the Grandmaster. In case you can't tell, we both are pretty low on this guy. And I wanted to address something that I've seen a lot, including from you, Lambie. I know your opinion on the Grandmaster is he's not good, but you may regret not getting him in the future. And I would like to point out that that is exactly what people said about Absorbing Man. And absolutely nobody regretted Absorbing Man until they gave him 2 extra power, which sort of, I think, is instructive for the Grandmaster here, which is to say, if they give the Grandmaster 2 extra power, I think, yeah, I would definitely regret not picking him up. But like 2-0 Grandmaster, I guess I wanted to dive into why he's so awkward and why he tends to not be in a lot of good decks. And the answer is, what is the use case for him when you do not draw the thing that he is trying to copy, right? What is he actually doing? And generally speaking, the answer is he's copying something else that's worse. And then you have the question of, okay, is the upside of him copying the thing you put him in the deck to copy worth it when he's just like actually not worth the card slot the rest of the time? Like, one of the things about Grandmaster and deck building to me that has struck me is just like, there are only 12 cards you can put in a deck, and spending resources on one that is likely, at par or easily replaced by other cards is just not a winning strategy to me in terms of collection management in Marvel Snap.
Yeah, so for Grandmaster, I echo the sentiment that like a lot of the decks that I've tried to play Grandmaster in feel like, firstly, yes, like you said, 12 card deck. I also feel like it's really like, you have to force it to be good a lot of
Yeah.
the time. It feels a bit forced because like firstly, yes, 2-0 is horrible like to play. There's only 6 turns in a game. And this 2-0, if you duplicate an effect, like you copy an effect and let it like go again, like even if it's like the one that people like a lot right now is like this Darkhawk rocks, like let you play extra rocks with rock slide and core kind of thing. I think the only time I really feel happy about playing Grandmaster is like I play Korg on one and then I play Grandmaster on two for the second Korg. But that's because I didn't draw Zabu, right? That's why you kind of have to do it. But like other than that, I feel like Grandmaster feels very forced, and like I'd rather much be playing like I tried cutting Jeff for Grandmaster, and I really miss Jeff already in that deck. So
Yeah.
yeah, Grandmaster feels forced even in the shell that's popular. I do feel though that like in bounce, I know not many people, not a lot of people like truly feel this as well. But like, I think in bounce, it's one of the few places where Grandmaster is like at least decent because your one cost cards are like super high impact and you run so many, right? So it's very easy to get the whole like turn one like one drop turn two Grandmaster thing. It's like very easy for it to happen,
Yeah.
and the impact of duplicating that one cost card effect is very high, like Forge or Demon, sometimes even Nico. So over there, it's fine. Like that's the only deck that I feel like I can reasonably play Grandmaster in and not feel like it's forced. But like I've tried it in. There's this thing going around as well, like this like Sarah Aliyev Grandmaster thing. It's very, I feel like as long as you know that is what they are trying to achieve, then they don't get really a chance to achieve it, that kind of
Yes.
thing. So that deck is really, I mean, that idea is cool and all, but like you have to really like set up for it super early. And the thing is, it's Marvel Snap, right? Locations are different every game. Your opponent's deck is different every game. The pan out of the game is different every game. Like if you're setting up for like one very specific like super combo that needs everything to go perfect, it's not gonna happen. So I think it's not gonna happen that often. So I think Grandmaster for now at least has very little use case. But I also want to address the thing whereby we talk about like Grandmaster's future value. I do agree that as a 2-0, it's very iffy for sure. But the thing is, what I have going for me right now is that I think Grandmaster just needs one like super bastard on review to be released that it can be built around. Like, the whole Grandmaster plus super on review, super strong on review card. I mean, now there isn't really something like that that's consistent. But in the future, if there is something like that, I would say you might regret not getting Grandmaster because that
So
could be a tier 1 deck.
I want to jump back to when you were talking about the bounce thing. Is it meaningful to you at all that the bounce list has a sub positive win rate on Untapped right now? Like the Grandmaster bounce list, is that meaningful to you at all? Do you think that reflects on the bounce shell as a whole just not being very good, or on the Grandmaster specifically not being a good fit in it?
I think the bounce deck is good, but not tier 1 good. Bounce hasn't been tier 1 good in a while. Like just straight up bounce with like Mysterio, Bast, and Bishop Monkey, that kind of thing. That one hasn't been tier 1 for a while. But I feel like the win rate of that deck, honestly, is less about Grandmaster and more about the fact that that deck is generally a bit more complex to play and very low in terms of room for error. There's like literally no room for error with that deck. Plus, it's a glass cannon, right? Like certain locations just ultimately completely screw you over. There is no real way to like get into like closed off locations and stuff like that. It's a very like you need to calculate perfectly from the get go, and even then, sometimes it doesn't work out. It's that kind of deck that works on very fine margins, and I think it's very complex to play. Plus, it's not tier 1 even if you play it perfectly. So all these things coupled together make it definitely a lot lower win rate when it comes to like the average player trying it out. Me personally though, I'm fine playing this bounce style because I've been playing it for a long time. But I can also safely tell you that even though I'm like decent and quite good with like this kind of stuff, it's not tier 1. So you don't have to strictly pick up Grandmaster to try and play this bounce deck and like hope it works out for you if you've never really been into this kind of stuff. Like it's not like a meta breaking, game changing deck. It's just something that I was relatively comfortable with and had good results with the Grandmaster.
Yeah, I just wanted to drill down on that in case anyone heard that and was like, "Oh, I should pick up the Grandmaster to play bounce." Like, pump the brakes.
Yeah,
No, just
no.
a little bit.
We haven't reached that game state where bounce is back at tier 1. It's been a while.
Let's talk about Beta Ray Bill. A 4/6 now. They added a point of power to him. He also shuffles a card into the deck. That card is called Stormbreaker 0/1. And when it is played, it has an on reveal that doubles Beta Ray Bill's power. In a generous world, this is a 4/13. In a world where people want to play Thor into Beta Ray Bill into Jane and then use that for either, Lockjaw stuff or Odin stuff, that could be appealing as well. I am interested in what Beta Ray Bill can do. I still think, and I'm going to get killed for this, I still think he should be a 4/7 because I want the Thor mechanic on a card that people just play on rate. I think that would be exciting gameplay, but maybe I'm just bad at card design. Like maybe that's just not exciting at all, and I'm just out here jonesing for something broken. But you could argue that Beta Ray Bill is a 4/13 on release. What are you excited to do with Beta Ray Bill, Andy?
So this card actually makes me quite happy because it's firstly it's easy stats. Like you look at this card and then you can straight up tell that it's basically like almost auto include in that Jane Lockjaw deck, and you can play Lockjaw that's not Thanos again, right? You go Thor Beta Ray Bill Jane. It's like the perfect curve. Honestly, I'm excited for this card because I think it will be quite highly played because it's not difficult to build a deck with this deck, right? With this card, right? It's just like when we look at it, we know how it's gonna work. You could even play it in like that whole monkey style, many zero costs like card deck with Jane as well, with Thor as well. So it's easy stats. I wouldn't say it's a super flashy card. It's just like we all know how it's gonna work out kind of card. I don't know if it's gonna be meta or whatever, but I will see. I will expect like a resurgence of like normal Lockjaw decks when this card is launched. The funny thing about this card is that like I can't actually remember this, but like can you imagine if like Stormbreaker and Mione are both in your hand and they look about the same? Then you need to remember which zero cost card.
One has one power.
Buffs which
they
one.
got one power. They look different.
Oh, you got
and
one
one
power.
has one power. Stormbreaker
I actually
has one
did not
power.
know that.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so it's kind of obvious then. But yeah, I'm excited for this card because like you get to play zero cost cards and you make things big. It's a simple effect. Like I don't think there's much to say about it other than that. I think it will be popular. I think it will be played a lot. I don't know if it will be tier 1, but I personally will be playing a lot of Lockjaw when this is launched.
So what's interesting to me is I think that the Thor Beta Ray Bill Jane deck, with or without Lockjaw, do you know what deck it reminds me of the most?
What?
It reminds me of Destroy. Or not Destroy. Discard. It's Discard, where Jane is MODOK. And then if you don't have MODOK, your deck is just like, oh geez, I'm just scrambling here, right? But if you do have MODOK, you're doing something that is just an asinine amount of points, whether that is in like an Odin shell or in a Hitmonkey and zero cost shell. Like, however you build the deck, it sort of looks like Discard to me, in theory. Like, the shape of the deck is similar to Discard, right? Like, you can see how, like, Dakin Dracula sort of resembles Thor Beta Ray Bill, right? Like, you have, like, your Dakin, your Dracula, your MODOK, Thor, Beta Ray, Jane. And what this deck has going for it, though, is that I think we can all agree Thor Beta Ray Jane is actually a better curve than the other one. Like, that's actually just a better curve. That is more stuff. That is better stuff. And so for that reason, I think that this could be a discard-like archetype, but not actually have the weaknesses that discard itself has. So I do think I am interested in seeing where this goes. I am interested in figuring out if you are a Lockjaw deck. I think you probably are, just because you want to have like that kind of backup plan in there when you're not doing your Jane thing. You want to be able to just like cycle your ones and get some actual power out there when you don't have your God curve. But like when you do have your God curve, it reminds me of a discard nut draw, especially if you can get an Odin in there. You get like a Doom off the Jane, a wave in there. Like there are things this deck can do. It's taking shape in my mind. and I'm pretty interested in them, even if they're just dumb stats that get clowned by the card Cosmo.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing, which is I was thinking about this from like a competitive point of view. So the dream curve is Thor, Beta Ray Bill, Jane, and then like 6 plus many zeros on like turn 6, right? So I thought about this and I realized that it's actually way scarier. This deck's way scarier when you don't draw Jane. Okay, let me like put it into
Oh, because you
perspective. So this
don't
is
know. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's so scary. It's like, okay, so turn 5 they don't play Jane. So do you know if they top deck the zero cost card on turn 6 or not? Like, and how many? Is it Mjolnir and Stormbreaker? Is it only Mjolnir or Stormbreaker? So you don't even know where to play your Tempo Shang-Chi or like YOLO Shang-Chi, right? Because what if you YOLO Shang-Chi into a 4/6 and you actually just don't have the hammer, which is hilarious. So it's actually quite scary. I'd rather my opponent go like Thor, Beta Rebel Jane, I'm like, okay, I'm screwed. Then like, does he have it or not? Do I play Shang or not? So that's one scary thing to think about. And like, not saying that you don't play Jane in your deck. You of course you do. I would say you play Jane in your deck, but like, it's just something I thought about that like could be really scary from a competitive perspective because you don't know when to snap or when to like play your Shang.
Moving on to decks that when you see what your opponent is playing, they make you go, okay. And I have a nominee for the category of, okay. It is She-Not. When I see someone playing She-Not, I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I know what I'm doing this game. And I think that there are some decks where it's like, this is a fine deck, but I know you can do better. She-Not actually might be an exception because you could be a newer player. That could be the only good deck you have. But it's definitely a deck that when I see it, I'm like, really? I feel like you could do better than that a lot of the time. Do you have any decks that when you see them, you're just like, I feel like you could have made a better deck building decision here?
My latest one is, I mean, latest by like, I mean, like the last whole month was Black Knight. Like, I personally think Black Knight decks are very okay. It's not that face up, okay. And like, if they could draw perfect and then they play Sarah, it's quite scary on turn 5. But like, Black Knight decks always make me feel like, cause the Black Knight shell is basically what Zabu, Miss Marvel, and then like stuff, right? Like if you get the Black Knight combo, it's super broken. If you don't, like you're just floundering around with like random cards that don't link together, and sometimes you cannot spend all your energy. So Black Knight, I think She-Not might be worse, but like I just want to talk about Black Knight first because like I always feel like it's very face up to me, like when they have everything. Like they play Black Knight on 1, then they do nothing on turn 2, they snap on turn 3, you know it's Lady Sif, and then you might just retreat before anything happens. Right? Like so Black Knight is one of those decks for me that I don't really see it. But okay, back to She-Not. She-Not is interesting because when we compare Black Knight and Black Knight Zabu and like She-Not side by side, right? Like if I get to choose, I will still sometimes fear the Black Knight deck and don't really want to play against it. But She-Not, the moment I see that they're playing She-Not, right, my entire brain just maps out the whole game from the moment I see them play Evolve Misty Knight. Like I can just tell what they do every turn, like 90% of the time. It's so face up, and once again to echo what you said, it's not exactly a bad deck.
It's
And
not
also if you're
bad.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it's not exactly a bad deck. And like if you just recently got high evo, you're a new player, you're trying to learn the game, it will get you to infinite without fail.
Sure.
It will. It's just where at the higher levels of play, when people choose to play this deck, I'm just like, why? Because it there's no real merit right now to playing this deck. There's so many things that screw you over, right? Location changer cards. Your turn 6 is very likely one big thing without a location changer card. If you have a location changer card, you probably play a leech, and everyone knows it's coming on turn 5 and stuff like that. So like it's very face up, and I feel like if you are proficient at the game and if you feel like grinding ladder for a long time and you are like trying to get the high ranks, you definitely can do a lot better than She-Not. And yeah, so that's my like supporting point from what you just said.
The way I think about She-Not is it just puts all the agency in the hands of your opponent. It's like,
Yes.
are you gonna do the thing that beats me? That's what it's saying, and that's why it has to play Leech to like bring you both down to the level of no agency, right? Like it's if you do not Leech on turn 6, you are saying me executing my game plan involves me dying if you do some.
I mean Leech on turn
things.
5, but yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean like if you don't play Leech, comma on turn 6, you
Yeah,
are now
yeah.
saying me executing my game plan involves me dying if you blow up this limbo. Like that is like the big weakness of this deck. Is just like if this limbo gets blown up, my whole game plan goes out the window, and then you have to like guess as to whether or not they're going to blow the limbo up. You put yourself in a blender, basically. And it's just like the best case scenario is they do it and you guess right. And the worst case scenario is you get completely obliterated. And it puts you in that situation as the pilot of the deck way too often for comfort, in my opinion. Let's talk about when to snap with Thanos Lockjaw. Thanos Lockjaw is a solid deck right now. I would consider it a good deck right now. But Thanos Lockjaw is a deck that requires you to play the game a little bit differently than other decks in the game. Other decks in the game reward a lot of card playing skills. I think more than any other deck that is commonly played in Marvel Snap, Thanos Lockjaw rewards gambling and risk assessment skills. And I wanted to drill down on Thanos snaps and Thanos retreats in this situation. So, Lambie, your basic Thanos snaps are you have Mindstone Lockjaw, you have Timestone Lockjaw, you have just like stuff that goes in a Lockjaw and a Lockjaw. And what exactly are your, like, you have to accept this willingness to, given that you're snapping on a Lockjaw, opt into these RNG outcomes where it's like, if I don't get any of this stuff, I still snap. That doesn't mean I was wrong. I was right to do it. That's what you do. But it requires being willing to make that choice. What is it that you tell yourself that enables you to make that choice consistently?
Yeah, so let's cover the, like you said, the basic Thanos Lockjaw snaps first, just to drill it in again for those people that are not very sure yet. Mindstone and Lockjaw is often, okay, this is without like opponent deck matchup context
Yeah.
and without locational context, just generic ones first. So like Mindstone plus Lockjaw is a snap. Timestone plus Lockjaw is a snap. Generally, Mindstone and already Timestone in your hand is also a snap because you get to ramp the 5s or the 6s. So these are like progressive game plans that you can snap on without much extra context. Mindstone alone is a riskier snap right now, especially if your opponent's deck also like gets stats out really quickly. Because if you Mindstone into not a Timestone and you don't have a Lockjaw, you can draw dead. The worst case is obviously Soul and Power Stone off the top from the Mindstone, you're stuck, right? So that's a bit of a iffy one. You can still snap that if you have other cards in your hand, which I'll talk about in a bit. So there are a few situations when you snap with Lockjaw, which is like most of the time you snap before you play Lockjaw. If not, what's the point? When they see the Lockjaw, they leave, right? So you snap before you play the Lockjaw. Then on turn 4, you roll with the Lockjaw. If you roll too small and they snap you back, it's fine, just leave. Like you don't have to like, oh, I need to gamble again. You like
Yeah.
that you already played a very bad turn 4, which is like you rolled like stone into stone. That's effectively not playing a turn 4. So those situations, if they snap you back, it's very simple. It's easy to leave. The easy one, the good cases, of course, is if you roll something big enough, and then you can maybe play a leech on 5, and then yeah, because the big stuff is already there for almost free, right? Another thing that I want to talk about, which is snapping on, this one is very interesting because this only came out very recently because of Scar, which is you can snap on wave now. It's very interesting. If you have a very specific like turn 3, you go wave into something very big. Then turn 5, it's like Scar plus Stone. There's a lot of stats. And then turn 6, you blob. Or turn 6, you go like Dino plus Stone again. So that's a very progressive like scaling gameplay. It's like ramping with the green stone, just that you ramp with wave. And now that you can go like wave on 3 into blob on 4, and your blob doesn't completely like eat up your whole deck, you still draw cards. So you can go for like a blob that's like 17 power on turn 4, and then on turn 5 Scar plus a stone, turn 6 Magneto or something like that. Yeah. So that's another snapping condition. Like snapping on wave is also quite interesting. I also tend to sometimes snap on like if I can play like a turn 5 Magneto. Turn 5 Magneto is crazy strong, right? Like especially in the mirror, because if you can turn 5 Magneto in the mirror with initiative, you lock up their lanes because the lanes are always like littered with stones, Lockjaw, Kyra, Wave. So it's a very good chance you get to clog a location with Magneto. So snapping on turn 5 Magneto is also very strong. You can sometimes snap on Leech on turn 5, but that's provided that you have enough stats on the board already to like fight for points. So yeah, these are the common like times that I snap with Thanos Lockjaw.
So I have been a pretty big fan of Annihilus bounce recently, but Lambie doesn't really get it. So he wanted me to step in and talk about why I like Annihilus bounce as much as I do. And I basically just like it because I think it's the best sort of tech cards and decent amount of points shell for me right now. Like if I wanted to play an Enchantress Shang-Chi deck, this would be the one I would go for. If I wanted to play a Shadow King Shang-Chi deck, this would be the one I would go for. And because of the way it does points, because of the way it can threaten your opponent, it forces them into awkward scenarios while not really sacrificing much of the power from, say, a Darkhawk deck, because you get things like, multiple hoods, sending over a void. Doing things of that nature is just as powerful as doing the things in like a typical Zabu Darkhawk deck. If anything, I would say the weak spot in the deck is like Werewolf by Night, but you're just sort of priced into playing that instead of something like a Miss Marvel, because you can't play Miss Marvel in your deck with 4 1-drops, and one of those 1-drops makes more 1-drops. You can't do it. So you play like bad Miss Marvel, where Miss Marvel is a 4/14, Werewolf is like a 4/12, and it's like, all right, well, that sucks, but you do it. And I think that the delta between Miss Marvel and Werewolf, yes, Miss Marvel is better, is smaller than the delta between how good the rest of the package is versus how good the rest of like the Darkhawk ongoing type packages. I think it's that the Annihilus stuff is that much better than the Darkhawk stuff that it makes up for the lack of being able to play Miss Marvel in your Enchantress, Shang-Chi, Shadow King type deck. To say nothing of the fact that it is much easier to play Enchantress in the Annihilus shell because you are not risking hitting your own Miss Marvel. That is the main argument I have for anti-bounce, and I am interested to see how and where you disagree. Like, if you had to put, if you had to give me a number, not a number, a name, a deck name, what is your favorite points and tech deck right now?
Well, my favorite points and tech deck right now is Loki. Because
really?
because Loki has so much free reign to run tech, right? Because as it's like basically if the tech is irrelevant in this matchup, just play Loki, right? Just
Sure.
swap it out. You don't really lose much. So that's my favorite points and tech share. But no, so this topic is something that I wanted to do simply because I just wanted to hear KM's opinion on this. It's quite interesting because I never once, and I still don't think the deck is bad. I actually think this deck is good, but I don't think it's that good. But I think
Yeah.
it's good. So I just wanted to hear what he thinks. And I feel like one thing that you mentioned that would make me just try the deck a bit more again is that you mentioned that Werewolf actually is not that great in this deck. It's just like
Yeah.
one of the least
It's not
useful
great.
things. And
Yeah.
when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually don't feel that it's that great, but it's just like
No.
there because it fits, right?
Yeah, it
Right, just
fits.
that because it fits, right? So
One thing
yeah,
that I
no,
thought
I think
about.
this deck is
Sorry to interrupt. I just like you reminded me of something. It's like, can we replace
yeah,
Werewolf with Darkhawk now that Blob is gone?
yeah,
And it's like, maybe, I
exactly.
don't
Right?
know.
It
But
plays Zabu
like,
anyway, right? So
yeah. But it's like I like that one makes it harder to run Enchantress. But like, yeah, if we take out Werewolf, we put in Darkhawk, we put in Korg over the Iceman I'm running. Okay,
Cork fits,
yeah,
yeah.
you're talking
Cork
me
does
into
fit.
this. You're
Yeah, the
definitely
cork
talking.
fits.
Yeah. Like, it's
Yeah,
definitely
because like,
worse than when we had Black Widow.
yeah, of
R.I.P.
course.
to 2-cost Black Widow. She
Oh
was
my
the best
god,
we ever
yeah.
had. Like, just an incredible card. But that is interesting.
Yeah, I honestly think that like I don't know, maybe we just realize this now as we are talking about this, but like the fact that we think that we both kind of like agree that the werewolf is a bit awkward sometimes, and then maybe we can just do Hawk, could like
Yeah.
open up a path for us to explore this a bit more.
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay, so this topic, super highly important topic, not to me, but to KMBest, is his huge love for the Zoo deck. I honestly, I'm just very curious because it's not just you, by the way. I actually queued
Yes.
into a lot more Zoo after the whole Dazzler buff thing, and I'm just like, what's KM on right now? What's this? What's this Zoo love? Does it stem from back in the beta? What does it stem from? So like, KM, can you tell me why you love Zoo?
Okay. Yes, it's about being back in the beta, but also it's about just like feeling those feelings that you had when you first started playing the game. It's like it's such a simple, wholesome deck archetype. There's no gimmicks. It's just I'm going to put some points on the board. Maybe I'll have a tech card. Here's a bunch of guys. It feels like playing an aggro deck in another game. You're just like, I'm gonna put a point, I'm gonna put a dude in every spot in this lane. I'm gonna play extremely fair Marvel Snap. And it's just like, I get why people like it. I am people. There is one guy on NA named Dazster who is playing a lot of Zoo, and that person beat me by randomly generating an X23 from Shauna, then legioning Rickety Bridge, and I died. That was 8 cubes down the drain. But like, no, it's the person who's playing it in like top 200. It's not nothing. I believe they're uploading their stats to Untapped because their exact deck has a very high win rate and nobody else is playing it. So there is that. And I think that, like, there's some room. It's probably never going to be the best points and tech deck, but it is usually going to be the most accessible. And it has access to, like, these weird options, like, Valkyrie or Legion, and just like weird cards that you wouldn't expect, but it's a great Valkyrie deck because it's flooding the board so much. It allows you to be like a Khazar Blue Marvel deck. Like it does a lot of interesting and cool stuff. And I think that there is value in a simple deck existing in the top of the metagame. Not everything has to be like, I'm taking 700 game actions, I'm playing Bounce and Loki, and I'm playing 50 cards a game. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. And I think that that's the root of why I appreciate Zoo.
Yeah, so here's my semi upgradable Zoo pitch, which is so I realized Zoo. We've been talking about this for like a bit here and there every episode, but like Zoo does have access to a 110, right? Which is like Squirrel Girl's a 110, so like you go
I
like
mean, like, yeah, when you
Blue
have Khazar
Marble,
Blue
and then
Marble, she's a 110, yeah.
she's a 110, right? So like here's the pitch, right? You go Squirrel Girl on 1, you play more 1 cost cards on 2, you Kyra on 3, or you play Dazzler on 3, then you go like Khazar Blue Marble, and then on turn 6, you slam a Alioth. like because you know how much stats is a 110 Squirrel Girl, like if you play it on turn 1 into Khazar Blue Marble. Like legit, you will have initiative, right? So I'm just thinking of it like to give you the oomph and the end game potential. Like this is real. This is actually real. You just put Alioth in this deck and sometimes it works.
You've just invented Patriot. That's what you've invented. You invented Patriot.
You're just
just do that instead. What are you talking about?
It's Brute Apps, but I think it's a bit more flexible because instead of playing Brutes, you play 1 cost Squirrel Girl. So
right,
like,
but
something to think about it.
You made it less flexible by putting Alioth in there.
The option. It's an option to end the game versus all the wombo combo stuff, you know?
Oh my god, that's so sick. I never thought about that. All right, let's talk about eating your Quaker oats. Lambie remains the world's biggest Quake fan of all time. We originally were going to name this segment Quake Possible or something like that. Like we were trying to come up with jokes about how impossible it was to play around Quake. And I'm just going to throw it over to Lambie, who will deliver you a soliloquy about how much he loves this card and how much nobody plays around it. Please take it away.
Okay, so when nobody plays around it, I don't just mean my opponents, I mean myself as well. I've lost 8 to Quake quite a few times as well. Because like, as much as I am the biggest Quake advocate ever, it's also so not common to play against it. When you play against it, you don't think of it. You don't think of like getting quaked. And the funny thing about getting quaked is why we wanted to call this topic Quake Possible or Quake Impossible, because it's really close to impossible to play around Quake for a few reasons. Firstly, it's not subconsciously ingrained in your mind yet, because it's not like Doom, Alioth, or Blob. Like you don't see it that often. That's one. So it doesn't get ingrained into your mind to play around Quake. Secondly, if it's a turn 6 Quake for 8 cubes, right? It's like a 2+4, 2+3, 2+2+2 kind of situation. Like everyone thinks of like, all right, I need to play around Blob on 6, I need to play around Doom on 6, I need to play around Magneto on 6. How is it easy to play around Quake on one of these 3 locations plus 2 other random cards? Like it's not humanly commonly possible. Even for myself personally, it's so hard. And like when they do have it, you're like, all right, this exists. So like I swear to God, right? Like I feel like I really hope this changes if Quake ever gets more like popular. But Quake is really one of the cards that like I feel is so difficult to play around. And I really think like in a competitive setting, if we have like any huge tournament coming up and then like someone like gets all the way to the top with a Quake deck, right? It's so exciting because it's so scary, right? Like imagine a Quake deck like just like running you out of a tournament because there's like so many different things that a Quake can do and it's so flexible. So even on ladder, of course. So my pitch is basically just this: like play more Quake, understand how scary it is, understand that like you should probably get used to like playing or like playing Quake or playing around Quake. But even after all that, I can safely tell you, right, that it's so difficult to play around Quake. It's so hard.
I have an alternate pitch. Play less Quake, because I don't want to have to play around it ever. Stop it. Stop playing this card. I don't want to think about it. Delete it. Get it out of the game. Remove it. I don't enjoy it. Please go.
I really hope that they actually possibly delete this card, because like the idea of having it there is so scary.
It sucks, dude.
I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it, but like I kind of like might have to, you know. I
Yes,
just don't want to, but I might have to.
it's if they made a card, if we were being honest about what her name should be, they need to change her name from Quake to Rug Pull. Like, she is out here like absolutely scamming people. That is the only thing she does. 90% of the time she's useless, but 10% of the time she's just like,
Yeah,
there
it's
goes the
it.
game. Like, it's so sick. Oh
So
my
sick.
god. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I've been KMBest. Remember to subscribe to Lambie's YouTube channel, like, comment, all that stuff. You can catch the next episode on my channel. Lambie, take us out.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you like what you just saw, follow, subscribe, leave a comment on this video, and we will see you in the next one on KM's channel. Bye-bye.